Mothership's taking fire. I've got your wing coverage. Close for missiles.
You are watching the Sci-Fi Channel.
Sci-fi and fantasies, JackChalker, and I promise you during the next half hour, no mention of the buzz on models is they're big, big, big. Sci-Fi Buzz storms a mad model party. One of science fiction and fantasy's most successful authors, JackChalker. Harlan Ellison holds forth. And we revisit one of TV's scariest shows, The Outer Limits. Whoa, there goes the signal. Train the camera on me. I'm the host of Sci-Fi Buzz, Mike Jerk. Welcome to the program. You know, our snoopy little staff members here at Sci-Fi Buzz have uncovered this information. The Outer Limits will debut as a special in January, and then in the spring it's going to go to a series on Showtime, and then in the fall, watch for the same episodes on what we call in Kansas, regular TV. You know, I bet the new Outer Limits will get a lot of talk out there in cyberspace. Which reminds me, the buzz hasn't got much attention online lately. I mean, let's get with it, folks. I see that Mystery Science Theater 3000 over on Prodigy gets 3,000 notes a month. Come on, buzzers. What's the matter with you people? Can't you type? Boo! Boo-hoo. What was I talking about? Oh, the Outer Limits. Now, I think there's any way the new Outer Limits will be as good as the old Outer Limits. Remember those terrorizing tales on the old series? Huh? You don't? Well, here's a refresher. It has been called the best science fiction TV series ever. But The Outer Limits lasted only a season and a half during its original network run back in the early 60s. However, the series has stood the passage of time with its continuing popularity in syndication and home video.
Human beings kill. Oh, aren't you convinced of my guilt?
Well, what difference does that make? The guy that pulls a switch in a death house doesn't have to be convinced of anything. I am not an executioner!
The Outer Limits strive to be more intelligent than other science fiction TV series before it. While heavy on monsters, the show depicted them as fully dimensional, with human-like thoughts and emotions. The stories were thought-provoking. Most often credited for the show's high standards is Joseph Stefano, who produced The Outer Limits, its first season, and wrote 14 episodes.
I wrote some shows that were really disguised criticisms of the CIA, of the Eisenhower administration that had come before it. I really was very annoyed with a lot of things that were happening.
Not only did Stefano use the show to make veiled political statements, it also provided him with a vent for his most disturbing, most repressed anxieties.
It really detonated whatever was going on inside you, and I was in analysis at the time, so you'll see a lot of my analysis in The Outer Limits.
You want to die. Unconsciously, of course. Don't let those unconscious drives win out, Dix.
Creating a new episode every 6 days was backbreaking work. Stefano put in 20-hour days, often writing in the car as he was driven to his office.
I couldn't find writers who could go home over the weekend and rewrite a script entirely, so I did it. And sometimes I would simply rewrite what had been given to me and not put my name on it or anything. And other times I would just write a new story. Some of the best Outer Limits that I wrote are, 48-hour scripts.
In spite of all of Stefano's hard work to make the series sophisticated and imaginative, the network viewed it as primarily a monster show.
They let it be known that that's what they were buying. And that we had better not go arty on them, And the word kind of passed around, and I began to, let's say that people made me understand that they weren't going to like it if we didn't have a monster.
The network censors and bean counters hounded Stefano. But the ultimate blunder was ABC's rescheduling the series opposite the hugely popular Jackie Gleason show. That killed The Outer Limits. But Joseph Stefano has gotten the last laugh on the suits with the enduring popularity of his series.
This is what is so wonderful about the Outer Limits and why I feel that it's the most meaningful thing that I was ever involved with, and that I got to communicate with people, and I'm still communicating with them.
You know, The Outer Limits lasted only 2 seasons. Joe Stefano worked on it the first year. Our very own Harlan Ellison wrote a couple of episodes in the second year. And now, years later, and I mean a lot of years later, Harlan is still talking fantasy and sci-fi.
Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, with the death of Bob Bloch and Carl Edward Wagner and Burt Lancaster and Sir Devendra Varma, about 5 or 6 real nice people died the last couple of weeks as we are filming this. You think about time. You think about how much time you got left, and you think about what memory is. And in truth, who we are is only a congeries of memories. When I talk about this happening at some convention or that happening at some convention, it's only real as long as there are still people alive who can back it up. When I talk about meeting Hugo Gernsback, there may have been somebody else at Chicago who said, yeah, I saw that when Ellison met a Gernsback. It was really interesting. When Bob Bloch dies, the past goes. So I've been thinking about time. I've been thinking about time. And time, at this time of the year, is chronicled by calendars. It's a long stretch, I know, but I don't know, calendars just suddenly seemed important to me. And so I have assembled a group of really interesting calendars that you can go out and look for. Now, at this time of year, many of you get your new calendars and you get the latest Star Trek calendar, or you get the latest Hildebrandt calendar, or every year you may get the Boris Vallejo or the Frank Frazetta calendar. And I'm going to try this year to move you off that. I'm going to try to bring into your life a little culture. You hear what I'm saying to you here? I'm talking culture. What I would like to do is get you to start looking at some of the wonderful art images that are a little fantastic in nature, but are not specifically genre-oriented. Like, for instance, back here, let me reach for it. There's a cactus here, and I don't want to hurt myself, but one of the great, great artists, the man named Gustav Klimt. Klimt did these beautiful, beautiful paintings. And this is a calendar of Klimt art. And it's published by a wonderful publishing house called Tenus. And Tenus publishes many, many, many wonderful calendars with terrific artists on them. The Klimt is only one of them. The Klimt, let me show you the Maxfield Parrish. This is the Maxfield Parrish calendar. It is so beautiful. Maxfield Parrish was the master. Most of the fantasists of today, whether it's Don Maitz or Michael Whalen, will tell you that Maxfield Parrish was the man. There's Parrish. Keith Haring. You ought to see Keith Haring. He had a very short art career. It was only from 1981 to 1990. And he did these wonderful street drawings, and he did these wonderful kind of fantasy images of the universe. Keith Haring died of AIDS, and some of the images are vaguely sexual in nature, but as you can see, there's nothing vaguely sexual about that at all. He just had these wonderful, wonderful kind of innocent street images, and I recommend to you Keith Haring, the 1995 Keith Haring. These are all Tenus calendars. Kenny Scharf is one of these great modern fantasists. Kenny Scharf's stuff is so funny and so pretty that it'll make you smile every day that you have the calendar up. I recommend Kenny Scharf to you. That's S-C-H-A-R-F. Now, let me show you something that Tenus does that you're going to love. This is called a cassette, a CD cassette calendar. This is Magritte, and on the back is the calendar. But each day, each month rather, is a Magritte painting. This one is one of my big faves. This is an easel calendar. Now, this one was done by Chronicle Books in San Francisco. You got to ask for this. This is the Kinsey Locomotive Portraits, and it forms an easel like that, and it stands up like that, and you flip it each month on your desk like this, and you wind up with these great images of old locomotives. It's a terrific one. It's not fantasy, I know, but it's wonderful. My last one is one of my real faves. This is the Fractals 1995 calendar. These are the computer-generated images that are based on the fractal geometry of Mandelbrot, and they are just beautiful. And here is a for instance. This is called Snowflake in Winter. It's by Darrell Hepting, and it's Van Gog's Snowflake Curve, an early mathematical monster, and it's just gorgeous. And you hang that one up in your house, and people will come in and say, instead of seeing these oiled barbarian warriors and women with improbable breasts, they will say, you got culture, you got class, and you will have that class for a full year if you'll only listen to me.
Former history teacher turned hot-selling novelist JackChalker. Next.
I actually, I start off with, usually it's a scene.
JackChalker continues to author an unending stream of gargantuan multi-volume novels, such as his current Watchers of the Wells series. Chalker is also one of science fiction's most successful authors, but he's driven by a wild imagination, not a rigid style. The author's favorite obsessions are ecology, political and social orders, and the search for a utopian community. Despite his degrees in history and English, the former fanzine editor is not your mild-mannered academic. Instead, Chalker is usually bursting with ideas and information that he'll share with anyone who comes near him. I can only imagine what it was like for the history students he used to teach.
I always enjoyed teaching. Well, you know, teaching is just show business that doesn't pay as well.
It is performing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no difference in the skill. I've done a little bit of both, and there's no difference in the actual skills involved. The only difference is in the paycheck. And
Huge difference.
yes.
What does writing do for you? How does it make you feel?
Well, it's hard work. I mean, it really is, because so much of writing a book is like method acting. As a matter of fact, I've mentioned that analogy to most people, and all of a sudden these writers say, yeah, that's it. The only difference is that instead of going out there and performing it, you then have to put it into words. And but it really can be. I mean, doing it right. I mean, it's method acting, but you're doing Shakespeare and you're doing all the parts.
As much as he wishes otherwise, Chalker knows that his works will probably never be visualized outside the minds of his readers, even though film producers have already come calling.
I go to these occasional Hollywood premieres, and I keep getting all these wall-to-wall producers coming up and saying, boy, I love this or I love that. God, I wish we could afford to make it. You know, I mean, it's just so, maybe technology will catch up and they can afford to make one of these sooner or later, but I mean, in most of my cases, you're talking about a 100% alien environment. And you're talking, in many cases, dozens of lead characters that are non-human. I'm a science fiction writer, and I like to do my homework.
With or without Hollywood, JackChalker intends to continue his quest for utopia. But in a way, the author may have already found it.
I've worked for nobody but me since 1978. I haven't, except to do things like, you know, interviews and panels and so on, I haven't really had to get up before noon, you know, for about 15 years now.
That's great.
You know, I mean, I can't really complain.
After this disconnect, Monster Model Mania, and the top-selling comic book writer in the country, Chris Claremont. When I heard there was going to be an LA party with lots of models, I could barely contain myself. I figured I'd be hanging with Cindy Crawford and Iman. Boy, was I wrong. One word, Pepsodent. I found myself in a room crammed with a huge collection of model figure kits. Hundreds of characters from my favorite movies, TV shows, and comic books. Though they call it the Mad Model Party, this convention is serious. There's no scream queens or out-of-work actors, and the partygoers are dedicated enthusiasts.
All these, you know, obscure kits, none of the stores carry. You know, about the only place you can see them is at shows like this.
It's real specialized for horror and science fiction. It seems it doesn't have a lot of the other elements. A lot of the generic conventions have a lot of stuff for everybody to attract everybody. This is like a real hardcore thing.
The hardcore model builders are called resin heads. Here's how one of the leading experts on figure models, writer Terry Webb, describes your typical resin head.
They would be people that when they grew up, they're big fans of movies, and you know, they're growing up now. They've got disposable income. They remember their childhood. They're trying to buy back the memories.
The resin heads have sparked a resurgence in figure models, particularly monsters. And the hobby is divided into two camps, vinyl and resin. The world's most famous model sculptor, Randy Bowen, was at the Mad Model Party. We cornered him on this vinyl versus resin issue.
The vinyl pieces are much easier to build and easier to transport, much more durable. The resin is cheaper to produce, and you can do more limited runs because it's not cost effective to just do 100 vinyl pieces just because the cost of the metal molds are so high.
The Mad Model Party had lots of mass-produced vinyl kits, but stirring up the most interest were the resin kits, many of them made by obscure companies. These garage kit companies, as they're called, were in abundance at the party. They are companies so small that the dealers at the tables were often the sculptors who created the models.
Down here I have a personal concept piece, Santa Claus for Bad Children.
Man, look at that. Because of the limited runs of garage kits, the prices are high, ranging into the hundreds of dollars. So what motivates resin heads to blow that kind of dough? I asked this guy who left his job as a lawyer to start a model company.
You aren't out chasing women and drinking booze and getting into trouble. You're at home. The wife is glad you're home. Yeah. The kid is glad you're home. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's really a lot of fun.
These models have saved your marriage.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're responsible for the success of my marriage.
Other highlights of the Mad Model Party: a model building contest, box signings by big-name sculptors, a model building demonstration, and a display of movie special effects models. And though I didn't meet any fashion models, I did bump into Vampirella, who showed me her resin kit.
Look at the detailing work on that. And this model's pretty nice, too. Ah, stop it!
My name is Pat Yancey. I'm from Houma, Louisiana. I'd like to recommend the book Palace by L. Neil Smith. It's set in the near future of mankind when an oppressive United Nations government has totally taken over the personal freedoms of everyone on Earth. But a hardy band of pioneers have colonized a conglomerated asteroid called Palace.
Though the name Chris Claremont might not be familiar to everyone, comic book readers know the name well. And many have enormous respect for the man who, for 17 years, was the force behind the Marvel comic book series X-Men. During his reign, over 100 million comics were sold, making him the top-selling comic book writer in the country.
It was a series that basically talked about prejudice and talked about the ways that people do not deal honorably with other people. And unfortunately, in today's world, it's a concept that has far more point than ever.
Though for the most part he was happy at Marvel, Claremont was considered just another employee. After all, he didn't own the rights to X-Men or its characters. So when his opinion about the direction of the series differed from his superiors, trouble soon followed.
I felt that as the person who had been writing the book, had been defining the book, who'd been instrumental in making it the keystone of the Marvel line and the best-selling comic in modern comics history, that I should have a substantial say in the direction the book should go in.
Claremont realized he had no alternative but to leave Marvel. But it didn't take long for new opportunities to present themselves. He's written 3 sci-fi novels, turned out a graphic Star Trek novel, with another one on the way, and has managed to keep his loyal comic book following happy as well.
It's a story of 3 people thrown together by circumstance, forced to work together, forced to build the bonds of companionship, if not friendship, and fight their way through to a hopefully cathartic and triumphant ending.
Claremont is writing a 12-issue project for Dark Horse Comics called Alien Predator, the deadliest of the species. And despite the He-Man sounding title, the comic's main characters are women.
Quite frankly, I find women, for the most part, far more interesting than men. They're more fun to present in a dramatic situation because most of the situations that a woman will find herself in a woman character, rather, in a story like Alien Predator or a standard comic book slugfest are situations that you wouldn't normally expect to find a woman in.
When he cut his deal with Dark Horse, Claremont insisted on ownership rights to the character Ash Parnell. This allows him to use Ash in future projects, whether they're under the Dark Horse banner or not. Given this is an unusual arrangement in the comic book industry, it appears Claremont learned some valuable lessons during his tenure at Marvel.
This is a way of saying we each are sharing this pie. We each have a hand in the creation of the pie, because I have no means of getting my work to an audience without a publisher. The publisher has no means of making money without a creator to give them product.
Next up for Claremont is Sovereign 7, an ongoing comic book series with a new team of 7 superheroes. In an ironic twist, the project will be published by DC Comics, Marvel's chief rival. Claremont will retain full ownership of every single character he creates.
I think the wonderful thing is that now that DC has shown that they are prepared enthusiastically to be flexible in this, then they've opened the way for other people to take what I've established and perhaps improve on it and drag comics kicking and screaming into the real world of publishing.
It says I'm supposed to add some water to my mana pool. Anybody? They're back. Now, I know some of you at home play Magic the Gathering in your Usenet groups, right? They're not buying it? Okay, so we play Magic during the commercial break sometime. It actually is a lot of fun. It's portable, inexpensive, just a lot of grins here. We're having a great time. It's kind of neat because the cards determine artifacts, enchantments, all sorts of different variables to the game. And you can get down to just one measly deck and you can still win if you're kind of lucky. Like Dave here. You know, the show's over. We just continue to play. This game can go on for hours. We'll see you next Sunday for Sci-Fi Buzz. Do something silly this week.
Whose turn?
In one bold move, it changed the face of science fiction filmmaking. Now go behind the scenes and discover the ingenious secrets that made the story come alive. The Making of Star Wars, tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. Now stay tuned for Mysteries, Magic, and Miracles next on the Sci-Fi Channel.